I didn't miss the moment my daughter-in-law slipped something into my champagne. She believed I had. Believed that the sparkle of candles and the murmur of conversation had softened me, that the glow of my 74th birthday and the string lights in my Nashville garden had turned me into a doting old host too busy to notice details. 9 days earlier, in the late light of a quiet Thursday, I had called my son Ethan and his wife Alyssa into my study. It's a long room, all paneled oak and leather-bound maps, the place where I sketched the first rough plan for Walker Biologics 35 years ago, and the place where I signed the last contract that made my fortune more than comfortable. Ethan sat forward, hungry and hopeful. He is 41, smart, decent at heart, and long accustomed to my safety net. Alyssa, 34, watches a room the way a hawk watches a field, still but measuring. I'm selling, I said. Walker Biologics goes to Greyridge Capital in 5 months. They both lit up, but for different reasons. Ethan saw an escape route. Alyssa saw numbers. And the plan? She asked. Her voice can sound like velvet when she wants it to. 75% goes to the Children's Neurology Initiative. The remaining 25% is for my retirement, for your mother's memory projects, and modest inheritances for you both eventually. 75%? Alyssa said, as if I'd mispronounced the word. That's family money. It's earned money, I said. Earning will be a lesson worth more than inheritance. Ethan's shoulders squared with defiance and then rounded in defeat. We've been here, he tried. Every board dinner, every charity gala. Showing up to eat isn't work, I said, and I kept my voice soft because I knew I'd sting him. I'm announcing it at my party. Our friends should know where the research funding is coming from. They left with a screech of tires that tore through the evening quiet. No calls for 9 days. Then this morning, Alyssa on the phone, honey-sweet apology, promising good behavior, promising she supported my vision. It rang false. I said yes anyway. I wanted witnesses. By sundown my garden was a small city of soft lamps and low jazz. The magnolias breathed out their perfume, and 52 people drifted through the stone paths as if the night had tilted them all toward laughter. I watched the gate, the buffet, the champagne. I watched Alyssa. She glides through a room with the practiced ease of a diplomat, offering a polished smile and a perfect pleasantry to everyone she passes. Trained in pharmaceutical sales before she married my son, she knows the dosages that pull a person to sleep and the schedules that run a hospital ward. She tracked me all evening, quick glances to check my glass, tiny recalibrations of distance whenever I moved closer to or farther from the champagne table. Her smile was all warmth and welcome, but her eyes were a surveyor's, measuring every angle. Meanwhile, Ethan stood beside me like a man who'd decided he was tired of being a shadow. He asked about the Foundation's work, about clinical trials, about grants. I saw wanting in him that had nothing to do with my bank account, and everything to do with a life. It made me proud in a way I hadn't felt since I taught him to ride a bike on a hill we were both sure was too steep. He squeezed my shoulder. Dad, he said, I'm going to start over. Real work. No more hiding behind your name. Alyssa's smile never flickered, but there was a flash in her eyes, the temperature of ice. She needs him dependent. A husband with his own footing develops inconvenient opinions about money. The quartet paused between songs, and my phone buzzed. The Foundation's director, Dr. Eliza Myers, was calling to confirm final language. I excused myself and stepped upstairs to my bedroom balcony where I could hear without being heard. From there, my garden becomes a stage. Approval is unanimous, Eliza said. We can accept funds the week the sale closes. We'll handle publicity discreetly. Good, I said. I'll share the news tonight among friends. I leaned over the wrought iron rail and watched the scene, Pastor Dan Reynolds chatting with Mrs. Lang, who runs the food bank, Megan Price, my attorney, making a gentle joke to get my shy neighbor to smile, Dr. Harold Green, my longest colleague, telling a story with his hands. It felt right. I have had more money than I need for quite a while. It was time to move it toward work that keeps children alive. Then my eyes found Alyssa, and the air changed. She drifted toward the champagne table with the soft, assured steps of someone who has practiced appearing casual. She made a screen of her body with the kind of elegant angle that reads as flirtatious from the front and functional from above. In her left hand, the bottle. In her right, the hand everyone's attention would avoid because the bottle was a performance. Her purse opened and changed shape. She took out a small packet. It could have been sugar. It wasn't. The packet tore. A dusting of fine, white powder fell into my monogrammed flute and disappeared as if it had never been. She stirred with a cocktail pick, then tucked the empty packet and the pick into her purse in a single practice motion. The whole thing took less than 15 seconds. "Charles? Are you there?" Eliza asked. "I'm here," I said, because I was more awake than I had been all year. "Let's finalize the rest on Monday morning." "Everything all right?" "You sound. Monday will be fine." When I ended the call, I kept watching Alyssa. She moved away from the table with the same easy smile, the same soft laugh she used when we first met, and she complimented the old family photographs in my hall. Nobody else had noticed a thing. My daughter-in-law had just tried to kill me with professional grace. There are times to call the police. There are times to confront a person in front of witnesses. There are times to gamble with your life in the hope that emergency medicine will arrive in time with the right tests and the right antidote. And there is one other option, a fourth way that lives in the gray place between revenge and justice. If Alyssa wanted me to drink the quick and quiet death of an old man at his own party, then Alyssa could drink the life she wanted to steal. I went downstairs. "Eliza sends her regards," I told Dr. Green and Pastor Dan when I returned to their circle. Alyssa looked up through her lashes, an actress catching her light. "Everything going smoothly, Charles?" "Smoothly," I said. "Actually, Alyssa, could you help with something?" Her pupils widened, just a fraction. She thought she was about to nudge me toward my death, to shepherd me toward the table where my glass waited. "An old friend, Tom Delgado, was supposed to be here. Board meeting in Dallas ran long. He feels terrible. He's sending a ridiculous arrangement to apologize. Driver is due at the front gate any minute. Would you make sure they place it by Clara's fountain?" Clara was my wife. The fountain is small and simple. It's where she liked to read. "Of course," she said, bright and sure. "Happy to help." She touched my arm, a gesture meant to convey affection, but it felt like the gentle brush of a spider testing its web. When she rounded the hedge toward the gate, I moved. My flute, my death, still waited at the center of the table. Nearby, on a lower cocktail table by the stone planter, Alyssa's own glass sat where she'd rested it to free both hands earlier. Hers was a heavier crystal with a narrow stem and a leaf etched into the base. I had given a pair of those to her and Ethan last December. Father Dan nodded as I passed. "Charles," he said, "this night is a blessing." "It is," I said, because it still could be. I lifted my poisoned glass carefully and stepped to the smaller table. The party had its own current, guests sliding and pausing, eyes turning toward and away from little islands of conversation. I angled my back to the crowd and decanted the golden liquid from my glass to hers, an invisible treachery carried on bubbles that caught the light. When her glass was half full, I set my flute down, reached for the bottle, and refilled a clean one for myself. The bottle felt heavier than it was. "Dad," Ethan said, stepping in. His eyes were bright in the lamplight. "The Langs want to know more about the foundation. I told them you'll speak before the toast." "I will," I said, and then, as if on cue, the click of heels returned down the path. Alyssa reappeared looking very slightly annoyed, smoothing it back into charm as she came into the circle of light. "No delivery," she said. "Perhaps the driver's delayed." "Odd," I said. "Tom is punctual." "No matter. You got back just in time." "For what?" She glanced, just once, at the champagne. "For a toast," I said. "Everyone, If I could trouble you to bring your glasses? The jazz eased to a rest. My friends and colleagues turned my way. 52 faces, each one I could name. Megan Price slipped her phone into her clutch and stepped to the front. Dr. Green's smile was proud and kind. He has seen me at my best and my worst. Father Dan folded his hands. Ethan stood at my left shoulder. Alyssa took up a spot where the light loved her, raised her etched glass, and looked like a portrait of loyalty. We'll cut the cake in a moment, I said. But first, I want to say that this night is about much more than a birthday. It's about thanking every person here who stood with me when the rooms were empty and the risks looked bigger than we were. A ripple of soft laughter. Glasses lifted. I have made a decision. I continued. In a few months, when Walker Biologics changes hands, 75% of the proceeds will go to the Children's Neurology Initiative. It will fund studies that pull families back from cliff edges they never saw coming. Applause like warm rain. Alyssa clapped, bright and sure, the actress again. And before we drink to that, I said, I want to add one more thing. Generosity is not only money. It's the proof of what we value. And sometimes what we value gets tested. Something in the air tightened. Alyssa's smile changed, no more than a breath, but I felt it. I looked across the faces of my friends and said, families should not poison each other. A murmur, then a hush that felt like a hand on the back of my neck. Alyssa laughed exactly once, a silver trickle of sound. Charles, she said, are you feeling well? Very, I said. Better than the person who doctored my champagne. I watched you do it from the balcony. Her hand trembled. The etched glass touched her lower lip. You could see the war inside her. Drink now and force me to follow, or lower it and look guilty before she swallowed. Whatever is the matter? She said, still holding the smile. This is absurd. I transferred your gift, I said quietly, clearly, into your own glass. There is a moment when a crowd's weight shifts from hospitality to history. That was the moment. Alyssa's chest rose once, sharply. She swallowed, some reflex, some instinct, and then she jerked the glass away as if she'd bitten metal. The crystal fell, exploding into 1,000 glittering fragments on the stone path. What did you do? She whispered at me, and the whisper had all the hate in the world tucked beneath it. What you intended, I said. Only I made it honest. Dr. Green moved fast, clinician muscles waking. Call emergency services, he told Megan, already checking Alyssa's pulse. If there's a compound, we need to keep her conscious. No, Alyssa snapped, reaching to snatch the phone from Megan's hand. She missed. Panic makes people sloppy. He's lying. He's confused. If I am, I said, why fear an exam? Ethan stood between us and stared at his wife as if the air had changed her face. Alyssa, he said, quiet, what did you put in his drink? She shook her head, sweat beading at her hairline. Nothing. This donation, he's not in his right mind. Then let the paramedics check both of you, Ethan said. Clear him. Clear you? Don't you dare. She hissed. Megan's voice to the dispatcher was steady and exact. She has the gift of calm crisis. Yes, an adult female, possible ingestion. Also a possible attempted poisoning. The target is alert and oriented. We have roughly 50 witnesses. Father Dan moved near Alyssa, his palms up, voice low. Let us help you. Don't touch me. She snapped, and the mask came off. There was no velvet now, just steel and fury and fear. Dr. Green looked into her eyes and counted. Rapid pulse. Tremor in the left hand. Perspiration. We don't know what we're dealing with, but it is not nothing. He turned to me without moving his eyes off her. Charles, you saw a packet? Small. White powder. Dissolved instantly. Alyssa closed her eyes, and when she opened them, she was someone else I had met only once, in that Thursday afternoon after I said 75%. This was the voice that broke households. Do you know what it is to watch him give away our future? She shouted. To donate it to strangers while we're expected to smile and say thank you? He was going to humiliate us. Ethan flinched as if a hand had left his cheek. Our future? He said. Or yours? Sirens rose beyond the gate. 2 neighbors had already opened the driveway. A moment later, the garden turned red and white and busy. The medics moved with efficient kindness. They sat Alyssa down, took a set of vitals, started a line. She gripped the edge of the chair and stared at me over their heads, and there was nothing soft left in her. She looked like a mirror held to a blade. The police arrived next. The sergeant listened to Megan outline what happened with my help, then took statements, then bagged the shattered glass. Dr. Green walked the lead medic through the timeline, symptoms, and potential classes of compounds. He did not speculate. He is careful. They loaded Alyssa onto the gurney. For a second, she searched the crowd for Ethan's face. When she found him, she said, almost pleading, "I did it for us." He didn't move. After a long time, he shook his head. His voice flat with finality. "There is no us built on this." The ambulance took her into the Nashville night. The garden creaked like a ship after a storm, everything still standing but not in the same place anymore. One by one, my friends came to me. Father Dan put a hand on my back and prayed soft words that sounded like clean water. Dr. Green asked me to sit and let him take my blood pressure as a formality. Megan promised me 3 things in quick order. She would manage statements, she would coordinate with the detective, and she would file whatever orders Ethan needed if he asked for them. She is a professional among professionals. Mrs. Lang hugged me like I was her brother. "Your gift will save children," she said, fierce through her tears. "That is what matters tonight." When the last cruiser rolled away and the final neighbor's hug faded and the quartet had quietly packed, the garden fell back into itself. Tables, lights, fountain, the smell of cut grass, the rustle of leaves. Ethan and I sat together on the low step by Clara's roses. "I didn't see it," he said. "Or I didn't let myself." The nudges, the comments, the everything is owed to us way she measured a room. He shook his head. "I'm sorry. You're my son," I said. "You fell in love with someone who put on a convincing show. That isn't a crime. What you do next is what decides the man you become." He nodded. "I meant what I said. I want to build my own name. I don't want to be the man who waited for a check." "Then tomorrow," I said, "we pour the coffee and start with a blank page." He laughed once, the kind that knows it is mostly a sob, and then he looked out at the place where the glass had broken and where the light still glittered like frost. "You were steady," he said. "In front of everyone." "How?" "Practice," I said. "And clarity." "Clarity?" "That greed is nothing but a long shadow cast by a small fear, and shadows always retreat from the light." We began to collect plates. There's something holy in ordinary tasks after a night that almost tilted the world. I folded linens. Ethan stacked glasses. We carried the last platters into the kitchen and set them in the sink with a clatter that sounded like punctuation. The morning would bring dew on the roses, a quiet promise of order restored. Soon after, the real work would be done not in a garden, but in a sterile conference room. I would sign the papers, a stack thick with legal language, and the sale would be final. Then, the most important signature of all, the one that transferred 75% of my life's work to the Children's Neurology Initiative. The world has many labels for a man like me, most of which I ignore. But donor is different. It's not a title you inherit, it's a verb you become. There will be hearings and charges and paperwork I would never have imagined involving a woman who once kissed my cheek at Christmas and called me Dad. There will be reporters who think the story is the scandal. They'll be wrong. The story is a garden full of people who stayed after the sirens, a son who looked at the truth and did not run, a man who refused to let fear turn him into a bank vault with a heartbeat. As for Alyssa, the doctors would do their work. Science is not sentimental, and mercy is not weak. Whatever the law decides, it will be because evidence has its own gravity. I will tell the truth when asked. I will not gild it or grind it. I will not hunt victory in the rubble of someone else's ruin. Justice is enough. There's a picture in my hallway of Clara watering those roses with a chipped blue pitcher. You can see the way her mouth turns when she tries not to smile too big. I kept looking at that picture when I first came in from the garden, and I said out loud, because sometimes talking to the dead is just talking to yourself out loud. We did something good tonight. And the ache in my chest wasn't fear anymore. It was the stretch that comes when you carry something heavy and set it down in the right place. If you're looking for the lesson, it's not about the cleverness of switching glasses. It's this: tell people what you value, and then behave as if you mean it. If anyone tries to make you smaller for doing it, step into the light and let them show themselves. They will. And when they do, let the truth do its slow, patient work. Ethan and I stayed up late, long after the last candle sputtered. We made the plan. We made a list of companies where his experience could count as a beginning instead of an end. He said he would start volunteering at the Foundation's hospital. It was important, he explained, to connect with the people whose lives the money would actually change. Before we turned out the lights, he looked at me and asked, "You think I can be the kind of man who gets chosen? Not for my last name. For me." "You already told the truth," I said. "That's the hardest part." Sleep came clean as new paper. At dawn, I walked the garden. The shards near the planter looked like fallen stars. I swept them up and dropped them into a thick bag, heavy with what didn't happen. Then I sat by Clara's fountain, listened to water slip over stone, and thought about what money can and cannot do. It can build a laboratory. It can fund a trial. It can buy time for a family whose days have narrowed to a single word: hope. It cannot teach a person to be enough. That lesson a person has to want. I think my son wants it. Later, Megan texted to say the detectives appreciated the clarity of the witness statements. Dr. Green called to check on me and to say the medics had acted quickly, that early symptoms had been managed. Father Dan asked if he could stop by with fresh biscuits. The chairs vanished by noon, and by dusk, the garden was so peaceful it made you question if the sirens had ever happened. And me? I wrote the first installment check to the Foundation and scheduled the rest for the week the sale closes. The numbers were very large numbers, commas like stepping stones across a wide river, and I typed them carefully, zeros and fives and the stubborn 7 that began the percentage and the total. I didn't think about what people might say. I pictured a child whose future wouldn't be lost to seizures, because a funded trial had learned how to extinguish the fire in their brain. That night became a watershed moment, the kind that divides a life into a clear before and after. I had only intended to close a chapter gracefully, but when the story took a violent turn, I refused to let the narrative be swept away from me. There is one last thing. Later that week, Ethan came by in a suit that didn't quite fit and a tie that did. He'd lined up a first interview at a mid-sized biotech outside of town, junior role, long hours, the kind that would have insulted him a year ago. We stood in my hall, and he looked up at Clara's photograph and then at me. "Wish me luck," he said. "Luck is what you hope for," I said. "Work is what you do." He grinned. "Then wish me a good day's work." So I did. I put my hands on his shoulders, feeling the frame of the man he was becoming. "I'm proud of you," was all I said, but it was enough. He left with a new lightness in his step, and when the door clicked shut, a long-held tension left the house with him. I didn't return to the balcony. The past had been settled there. Instead, I went to my study and pulled out the initial proposal for the Children's Neurology Initiative. It was filled with clinical language and projections, but tonight, I read it differently. I saw faces between the lines. I saw the quiet courage of parents in sterile waiting rooms and the fierce, fragile hope of children. Alyssa fought for what she believed was hers, a legacy she could count. She saw it as a treasure to be hoarded. But that night clarified the truth for me: a real legacy isn't what you lock away in a vault. It's what you set in motion. It is the chain of events you start that continues long after your name is forgotten. Greed is a barren philosophy, it ends with itself. Generosity is the only thing that truly compounds. It builds and grows in other people's lives. I am an old man. My story is mostly written. But with a few signatures, I can help begin countless others. Stories of children who get to grow up, of scientists who get to chase a cure, of a son who now understands that the greatest inheritance isn't a number in a bank, but a purpose in his own 2 hands. My name will be on the documents. But the real story, the one that truly matters, will be written in their futures. So, what do you think? Was switching the glasses an act of justice or revenge? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want to hear more stories like this one, don't forget to subscribe.